Hi, I'm Sarah Sutter, CEO of Nature Play South Australia. Nature Play South Australia is a not-for-profit organisation who want to make unstructured outdoor play in nature an everyday part of childhood. Remember when playing outside every day was a normal part of growing up? We played in creeks, climbed trees, swam at the beach, spent hours playing in the backyard and didn't come home until dark. That doesn't happen anymore. Times have changed. Today's children are spending less time outside in nature than ever before. In the space of just one generation, there's been a dramatic shift from children playing outdoors to indoors. There are many reasons for this: increased access to technology, time-poor parents, a risk-adverse society, and smaller backyards. The end result is that our children's worlds are shrinking, and children are no longer doing the everyday things that were considered normal for children. Research is showing us children today can identify corporate logos, but not our native animals and plants. 14% of Australian children have a mental health disorder. I have access to a lot of research about nature play and the benefits for children's development, and there is not one piece of research that says children playing outdoors will have a negative effect on them. What is negative is not giving our children the opportunity to experience this unstructured outdoor play in nature. When children have exposure to this type of play, they learn how to be creative, manage risk, cope with failure, realise achievement, understand responsibility, and resolve conflicts. These are all crucial for children's development. Nature Play is here to help get our children back outside, and we're going to do this by empowering the South Australian community to make this change. We work with everyone, from parents, schools, local government, and any organisation that has a child-family focus. We create resources, provide events, and influence schools and local government to get rid of the fantastic plastic playground and put back nature play spaces at their sites. These play spaces mimic nature. They provide opportunity for children to learn, explore, experiment, create, interact, and be themselves. To help illustrate the benefits of this type of play space, we invite you to watch this video. It shows one community's commitment to ensuring their children and the community more broadly had opportunity to experience a nature play space each and every day. The space has recently been completed as a result of the vision of a brilliant designer and the hard work of parents, teachers, and students of Trinity Gardens Primary School.
The nature play idea around the school has been developed for quite a few years, so we've had a really strong group of parents who've been really excited and really wanting to develop that in the school.
The first phase of the project was very much seated within the adult sphere, I suppose, and we were asked to develop something and discrete and then take it in sort of for that to be developed.
We were also looking at doing a small nature play area on the other side of the oval, but some of the teachers, when we looked at the cost, it was hideously expensive for a very tiny space. The teachers were quite opposed because they felt that it was not good value for money and that it really wasn't a slightly artificial space built up. It didn't really reflect what children were looking for.
So there are places that we take kids. We promote going to a national park for kids. We promote an animal care shelter, or even a native animal place where you can go and see a potteroo and touch it and hold a snake. But that makes it the other. It makes it that place that you go to and that's a boutique thing. It's like going to a cupcake shop or something that's not your familiar. This is going to be familiar for these kids.
If we were dreaming about what our school grounds would look like, what would we want to see here? And the children had the most amazing ideas around, obviously, swimming pools and things like that. But, we just investigated all the options and what would you want to do? And they said, we want to be able to run and roll and climb, and we want to be able to dig and in creeks, and we want to have frogs, and we want to have areas where we can, climb in things and roll in things. And so we, and swinging and equipment. And so they raised a really whole great range of ideas.
At that stage, everything was so risk averse that people just, the government and the schools just would not accept any risk in play. But over the last about 2 years, there's been a real push for government. Teachers are starting to understand that you need managed risk, and that you need a small amount of risk that you can carefully manage for children to learn to be creative and learn to take manageable risks.
We spent a long time talking about what we had prudently managed for a number of years through efficient allocation of the resources that we're given, which are not luxurious. We also fundraise ourselves and have some money from fairs and walkathons and things like that. So when it came down to deciding what we would do with our money, in the end this one rose to the top because it was in everybody to want to do something substantial.
And I think having input from the people who are going to use your space, whether they're children or community members or the adults, that's a really important process in terms of developing an idea so that people have ownership of it.
And then we realised that we actually had changed and were, presenting, we were going to change our entire school ground. So both ovals completely renovated, one oval completely almost gone and, converted to 2 little village greens, and then nature play and environmental, activities all over the rest of the oval. So it was a pretty exciting and big project.
What makes more sense to me, rather than throwing into the walls, is actually throwing out from the walls. Would be much better in terms of the water around the building.
When we were able to get Yvette Sunset on board, she then ran her circle process, which obviously brought in people, parents, staff and children in a really formal way, and they were able to contribute to that design at both sort of the initial stages and at the stage of looking at what the final design was and giving feedback on it.
And where everybody, right down to the principal, had equal say, and they took to that really well and used that process so well that we had co-designed the whole project, which is pretty complex, within 2 weeks with the plan down. We were within a month ready to start. That's an extremely fast process.
The Divot Oval restoration was stage 1 of the transformation process. Completed in January of 2015, it features a bike and running track around the outside of the oval, and a multitude of tree plantings, some of which will create a long shaded tunnel over the pathway on the southern side, plus plenty of shade for those who use the oval for cricket and recreation during the summer months. The edges of the oval have been underplanted with grasses and shrubbery, discrete meeting areas, a deep sandpit, and seated areas made of logs have been placed between the pathway and fences for the use and enjoyment of the students and wider surrounding community.
The environment that we're creating here is a very rich educational and play and social environment. Very important, all those 3 levels together. It has many features to facilitate those kinds of experiences for children.
Continuing with this approach, in early February 2015, the reconstruction of Portrush Oval began. The first stage of this happened below the surface, with trenches prepared to distribute water for irrigation to each of the areas.
Once we realised that the project we had was kind of unwieldy from a parent volunteer point of view, we really needed some help and support to take it to the next level. there was a fear, I guess, that if you do it completely from a volunteer point of view, that it could take forever. So we had some really lovely support from companies that we were speaking with. A number of them gave us a great deal of information and were very generous with ideas and feedback. But we really felt like we wanted the idea to be earthed in a real understanding of children's development.
With the underground infrastructure completed, all the efforts of the planning process rapidly became apparent. The single oval became 2 age-specific playing areas, the larger for Year 11 sports, and the smaller for young children's games, fetes, and festivities. The ovals are surrounded by 500 metres of pathway designed for cross-country running and opening up the environment for wheelchair access to the purpose-built landscape of vegetation, contoured valleys and hills. There is the food growing area with an orchard, raised garden boxes for growing vegetables, and a comprehensive herb plantation to assist the educational aspect of the human-to-nature partnership of sowing, caring for, and harvesting healthy and nourishing crops. The labyrinth for contemplation and perhaps a game of chasey. A garden of sensitive flowers for fragrance and touch, for the children running or in wheelchairs, to feel the textures of the plants and experience their perfumes in the air and on their hands, creating an adventure of sensory delights. Attached to the northern wall of the St. Maurice classroom for children with disabilities is a long blackboard which all children can access to draw and write, and a screen made out of lemon-scented gum with a little window where they can offer puppet shows and shop-type play to other children. There is a big sandpit with a really deep digging capacity. It has a hand-driven pump where the children experience drawing their own water. There's a quarry with 5 different types of rock, one that comes from Tunkillo that the children can grind to create a sparkling fairy dust. And there are slates that can be drawn on using different types of rocks or old brick. A log jam for the children to safely climb, run, jump, and test their balance upon. A canyon creating a different variation of terrain that encompasses areas for rock climbing and creates more space for quiet discovery and play. The frog habitat, where they learn of the frog's lifespan developments and how to care for them, and also find the weaving reeds with which to experiment. The indigenous plant environment, with very beautiful species, ground covers, and shrubs like those that produce seed pods that can be used in study and as a play source. A thorny plant section placed as a sanctuary for protection of small nesting birds from roaming cats and inquisitive children. Right next to which is the Farmhouse Ruin, where children can contemplate the times of old settlers and recreate their lives in play with the fireplace and utensils there.
Most of the materials are made from olden day things like this. This school actually used to be a farm, and they found horseshoes and they decorated it with that, and old pottery and stuff like that. So it looks really good and it's fun to play in.
The re-establishing of an Adelaide Plains forest and shade trees. At least 3/4 of an acre is devoted to this richly planted forest, with all the different canopy layers, including all of the shade trees, wild grasses that will seed themselves, and wildflowers. An area that will provide a wonderful habitat for birds and native animals. And running through it all, a creek to garner all the previously damaging water flow issues into a shallow channel with bridges, rock pools, and stone and log crossings.
It's a really good idea with the tennis courts.
Yeah,
and
the creek. It's really smart.
It used to get so mushy over there.
It was like really disgusting and hot.
With a project like this, you put a lot of thought into it, and if you have good teams and they're ready to evolve the project on site, it's really a matter of just doing it, keeping open, keeping cooperative, collaborative and transparent through that whole process. And that you need a special type of crew and a very different model from an ordinary building model. You need people who have a much more holistic interest in the environment and who really understand why things need to be a certain way. Also for things like how can you make things safe without completely dumbing it down, for the children.
So would you trim up any of this stuff then?
I don't think so, because I would be trying to stop. If it was me, I'd be trying to bring stuff back this way, just to discourage any climbing over, because that's the only time there's going to be issues.
Well, with regards to health and safety, I mean, when you're dealing with a natural product, it can be incredibly difficult to comply to any set, documented facts and figures, so to speak. So what we try to do is mitigate that risk as much as is absolutely possible.
Yeah, so obviously, as a society, back in the 70s, we had some pretty crazy playground equipment that actually was dangerous, and some kids got hurt. But what we've done now is we've gone right the other end of the scale and put these plastic, artificial playgrounds in that are so over-safe, that are so unengaging for kids. In terms of nature-based play spaces, the only sort of standards that you can apply, I believe, are obviously common sense, getting rid of the sort of hazards but leaving the elements for risk. So, great big rocks that they can, balance on is fantastic for them, judging their own risk, which is really important. But, obviously you want to get those hazards that they can't see. Looking at sort of, entrapment issues. So, as soon as you go above 600, the standards say that you need to make sure there's no head and finger entrapments.
Look, at the end of the day, the only other thing that sort of comes to mind would be to really trust in the process and trust in the ideology. You don't necessarily have to understand it, but what's important in these sort of spaces, in particular a learning environment like this, is to really get amongst it, get involved with it and make it work. Appreciate it for what it is on whatever level that may be, but at the end of the day, it's a lot better than an oval.
One of the most important things is that if you learn when you're a child to enjoy being in natural spaces, you will grow up to have an understanding of nature and of your world, and you will care for it. You'll care for your world in a way that is fundamentally different to growing up on hard play spaces in formed, built plastic stuff.
I'm spending as much time at recess and lunchtime out there because it's actually a really fun duty now to do as well, and the children are just so excited to want to come and tell me and show me what they've been doing. So their cubby house building is amazing, even within two weeks, and what we're seeing is not just the actual physical what they're doing, but the collaboration and the learning and the socialisation between classes who actually sometimes don't necessarily always play together. The children now are centred on the activity, not so much on who I'm playing with. So if they want to go and build cubbies, they're actually not so worried about, I haven't spent time with you before, I don't really know you. They're more worried about, I want to get in and play at that cubby too, can I join? So we're seeing students playing with students who wouldn't normally have done that. We're seeing that a real connection between children around the activity rather than about their existing friendships. So I think it'll change the way that even our children play and interact with each other.
Lots of people here have placed like wooden just planks and lots of sticks around the area, so you can use that to build. And donated it from their houses and just came in on the weekends, dropped them off, and so that's how we got most of our sticks to build with.
This is it. This is an education. So it's endless. absolutely endless, and an opportunity that I'm so grateful as a teacher to have. The children don't have to be grateful, they can just take it for granted, really.
I like it.
Kind of
Definitely like it.
Yeah,
Middle.
I could get used to it easy.
How much
way
do you
better.
like it?
A lot.
A little bit.
There's some things that kids like to build and play on, and then if you like games like soccer, like sporting, there's like a little grass area where you can play on, and yeah.
A little bit for everybody.
It's
Well,
good.
yeah.
It's really good.
I like the
because
track.
It's actually really good because there's things for like little kids and then there's things for
for
older
the bigger
kids that
kids.
other
Yeah.
people can play with. Like we've got the gardens.
Yeah.
That will be probably like a 5, 6, 7 job to like get them like watered and like all the plant area and stuff like that. And then we've got like the logs and stuff like that.
We see it as a community space, and we've had some really amazing responses from our neighbourhood. You know, people saying, "Wow, it's so beautiful here now." You know, I come on the weekends to use the track, you know, to walk around with my dog, and now, you know, you've got all these beautiful grounds, and so I like to go walking there, and so we've had some really lovely feedback.
Anna said something special was happening about the naming of that oval, and we have had a vote. It went to vote to every class in the school, and I have now got the winning name. Would you like to know it? Out of the 4 choices, which were Wirra Forest, the Forest, and Portrush Forest, we now have Portrush Forest. Thank you.
For me, we've laid a foundation, and we should build structures into the space. We should plant more things. We should dedicate little restoration areas. We should have tigers. Whatever is going to make this the space that gives the kids all the benefits of open space, unstructured experiences. People who now come to the school and continue their involvement with the school should add that to the space. It's not finished, it's started.